My name is Nora Ellis. I'm 31 years old, and for 3 years I lived like a human safety net. The funny part is, I didn't realize it. I called it love. 6 months ago, my best friend Mason looked me dead in the eye, laughed, and said, "You're not going anywhere, right? You'll always be there when I'm ready." He said it like a joke, like I was this loyal golden retriever who would sit patiently by the door of his life until he finally decided to come home. Well, I went somewhere, and now he calls and texts like a man dangling over a cliff, screaming for the net he assumed would always be there. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back to how I went from being someone's backup plan to realizing I deserve to be someone's first choice. I'm Nora, 31, project manager, born and fried in Houston traffic and humidity. For 3 years, my world orbited around a guy named Mason Reed. Elementary school teacher, all sunshine and chaos. The kind of person who remembers your coffee order but forgets his own keys inside his car. The guy who calls you at midnight because his Tinder date went badly and he just needs someone who really gets him. And I ate it up. Sunday brunches, road trips to Austin, movie nights where he'd fall asleep with his head on my shoulder while some rom-com played in the background. Photos that looked exactly like couple photos, just with captions like best friend and heart emojis that meant everything to me and absolutely nothing to him. Every "you're the only person who really understands me" felt like a promise. Every "I don't know what I'd do without you, Nor" felt like a slow build toward something. Spoiler, it wasn't. 3 weeks before everything snapped, we were decorating his Christmas tree. His apartment smelled like cinnamon candles and fake pine. White Christmas played from a cheap Bluetooth speaker. I was on the floor untangling a knot of fairy lights while he balanced on a stepladder, hanging ornaments like we were in some holiday movie montage. "God, you're a lifesaver," he said, glancing down at me. "You know what I love about you, Nora?" My heart did that stupid thing, this tiny, painful stutter. "You're so dependable. I never have to worry about you changing or wanting something different from me." I should have heard the alarm bells. Instead, I smiled like an idiot, fingers burning where the lights had been plugged in too long. He laughed and reached for another ornament. "Promise me we'll always be like this. Even when I finally find my Mrs. Right, you'll still be my person. Right, Nora?" He said it casually, like it was cute. I was literally standing in his living room, decorating his tree, acting out some domestic fantasy I'd been clinging to for years, and he'd just drawn the line in permanent marker. You, forever friend. Her, future wife. There was a roaring in my ears I didn't recognize as rage yet. That was when something in me cracked. "Mason," I said, my voice coming out smaller than I wanted, "what do you think we are?" He blinked down at me from the stepladder, ornament in hand. "We're us. Best friends. Why?" The words started tumbling out before I could stop them. "How long have you known I've been in love with you?" The ornament slipped from his hand and bounced harmlessly on the carpet. His whole face froze. "Nora." "I've been falling for you since the first time you called me at 2 a.m. because some girl ghosted you and you showed up at my door with gummy worms and cheap wine," I said, my throat tight. "I drive you to the airport. I help you move. I stay up all night talking you off emotional ledges. We do every couple thing except actually be a couple. What did you think this was?" He climbed down slowly, like approaching a skittish animal, or a bomb. Maybe both. I didn't know you felt like that," he said. "I mean, I suspected, but Nora, I can't lose you. You mean too much to me." "Just not like that." He didn't have to say it. It was right there in his eyes. "I'm not ready," he added quickly. "I don't want to ruin what we have. You know you'll always be here for me no matter what, right? Always be here. Like furniture. Like a couch he assumed would still be in the same spot. Years from now, whenever he decided he was done trying trendier pieces. My heart felt like it was being grated over glass. And do you know what I did? I smiled. I actually smiled. I hugged him and said, "Of course." I helped him finish decorating his tree. I laughed at his stupid Christmas playlist. I pretended nothing had changed. Then I drove home in silence, and for the first time in 3 years, saw our entire friendship clearly. I wasn't his friend. I was his emotional vending machine. Insert crisis, out pops validation. Every time a date went wrong, who did he call? Me. Every time he needed help moving, assembling IKEA furniture, picking out a shirt for a date with someone else, me. Every time he needed a +1 for a wedding so he didn't look lonely in photos, me. I got the privilege of watching him swipe through dating apps on my couch. The honor of listening to him talk about women who were so exciting while his head rested on my shoulder. The joy of being told I was like a sister while he wore my hoodie and used my Netflix password. I was performing girlfriend duties for friendship wages, and he loved the arrangement. Because why wouldn't he? He got affection, attention, stability, emotional labor, with zero commitment. The next morning, I woke up with my eyes swollen and my brain weirdly calm. My phone buzzed with a message from Mason. Last night was fun. Thanks for always being there, Nor. I stared at it, then did something that shocked even me. I called my boss. About that offer in Denver, I said. Is it still on the table? He sounded surprised. I thought you turned it down because of, life stuff? Life stuff changed, I replied. If it's still available, I'll take it. By lunchtime, it was official. I was moving to Denver in 2 weeks. When I told our friend group it was for career growth, everyone cheered. Mason pulled me aside afterward, brow furrowed. Don't worry, he said, squeezing my hand. Distance won't change anything between us. You'll still be my best friend. I'll visit all the time, and you'll come back whenever you miss Houston too much. It'll be like you never left. The assumption was staggering. He genuinely believed my life, my new city, my weekends, my future, would still revolve around his comfort. That my apartment in Denver would be his crash pad, that I'd keep my heart in storage just in case he ever decided to take it down and try it on. What he didn't know was that his safe option had just quietly expired. I was done being the net beneath his tightrope, and he was about to find out what happens when the person you assume will always be there finally walks away. If you've never uprooted your life in 2 weeks, let me tell you, it doesn't feel brave. It feels like jumping off a building and hoping you were right about the parachute. Those last days in Houston passed in a blur of cardboard boxes, goodbye dinners, and people saying things like, I'm so proud of you, Nora, while I nodded and pretended I wasn't leaving because my heart had been stepped on in the softest, most casual way a person can be crushed. Mason helped me pack one night. Of course he did. He sat cross-legged on my living room floor, wrapping my mugs in newspaper, talking about all the Denver adventures we'd have when he visited. We'll go skiing, he said, getting marker on his fingers when he labeled the box. You'll hate it at first because you hate being cold, but you'll pretend you don't because you're stubborn, and I'll laugh, and he was narrating a future where I was still orbiting him. In his mind, geography was just a background detail. I watched him from his hallway, leaning against the wall, feeling like I was already a ghost in my own life. If he noticed how quiet I was, he didn't mention it. That was the thing about Mason. He was great at noticing the stories he wanted to see. The rest, blurred. When he hugged me goodbye at the airport, he whispered, You'll be back. You are too dependable to stay away forever. I smiled into his shoulder. Maybe I'm done being dependable, I wanted to say. Instead, I just said, Take care of yourself, Mason, and walked toward my gate without looking back. Denver greeted me with thin air, mountain silhouettes, and a silence I didn't know what to do with. No spontaneous, hey, you home? I'm outside, texts. No late-night calls because his date bailed. No constant drip of other people's emergencies flooding my phone. Just me. My new apartment had beige walls, ugly carpet, and windows that looked out at an anonymous parking lot. It was the first place I'd ever chosen without thinking about how convenient it would be for someone else. The first night, I sat on the floor with takeout and a cheap bottle of wine, scrolling through old photos of Mason and me, his head on my shoulder in a movie theater, us laughing with whipped cream on our noses in my kitchen, a shot of him asleep on my couch, my hoodie around him like a claim I never had the right to make. I almost texted him. I almost said I landed safe. Instead, I closed the gallery, turned off my phone, and let the loneliness hurt. Because underneath it, something else was buzzing. Relief. Nobody needed me. Nobody expected me. For the first time in years, my entire emotional bandwidth belonged to me. Once work started, everything accelerated. The Denver office wasn't like Houston. Less small talk, more pressure. My new boss threw me straight into the deep end. Site visits, stakeholder meetings, late nights building timelines for a $40 million project that made everything I'd done before look like practice. But here's the twist. Without Mason's constant emergencies, I thrived. I had time I didn't realize I'd been bleeding for years. I joined a local photography club on a whim after seeing a flyer in a coffee shop. I said yes to a weekend 10K and somehow ended up training for a half marathon. I rebuilt my old travel blog, posting photos and long, rambling essays about starting over in a city where no one knew who I'd been before. The less I revolved around his life, the more mine started to actually spin. Mason's first text came the day after I posted a picture of the mountains at sunrise. Mason, look at you, mountain girl. How's Denver? Mason, Miss our Sunday brunches already. I stared at the screen. The old me would have sent a paragraph back, asking about his week, his kids at school, his terrible love life. Instead, I typed, "Me. Denver's good, busy." He replied almost immediately, "Mason, I knew you'd crush it there. Don't forget us little people when you're a big deal." Us, like we were a unit I had temporarily relocated, not something I'd quietly stepped away from. I put my phone down and didn't respond. An hour later, "Mason, okay, miss you though. Call me when you can." I didn't. Not that night, not the next. I wasn't punishing him. I was just not volunteering anymore. Weeks blurred into months. His messages kept coming. At first, they were casual. "How's the project?" "My students did this cute thing today. Saw a place that reminded me of you." I replied in polite, short bursts. "Sounds fun. Busy day. Talk later. Glad you're doing okay." No midnight crisis management, no emotional debriefs. The tone of his text started to change. "You're being weird. This isn't like you. Did I do something?" The question stung because, yes, he'd done a lot of things. He just didn't consider them things. He hadn't cheated or screamed or broken plates. He just quietly built a life where my heart was a tool he picked up when convenient. I started to realize that being the safe one doesn't mean you're loved. It means you're useful. I met Ethan Park on a morning I almost talked myself out of leaving my bed. The photography club had organized a sunrise hike, 5 a.m., call time, freezing cold, trailhead in the dark. My alarm went off and I stared at the ceiling thinking, no, absolutely not. Then I thought about the old version of me, the one who would have stayed awake until 3 a.m., talking Mason through yet another breakup, then dragged herself through the next day on caffeine and anxiety. I got up. The trail was half ice, half dust, my breath coming out in white clouds. A group of us trudged upward, headlamps bobbing like fireflies. I was fiddling with my camera, trying to remember how to adjust the ISO in low light, when a voice next to me said, "Your shutter speed's too low. You'll get blur when the sun breaks if you keep it there." I turned. He was a little taller than me, dark hair pushed under a beanie, backpack straps cutting into a puffy jacket, cheeks pink from the cold. His camera was older than mine, worn at the edges like he'd actually lived with it, not just used it for Instagram aesthetics. "Sorry," he added quickly. "That sounded obnoxious. I'm Ethan." I laughed more than the situation warranted. "Nora, and you're right. I haven't really shot in low light before." He stepped a little closer, not invading my space, just angling his camera so I could see. "Here," he said. "Try bumping your ISO. Tighten the aperture a little. Sunrise moves fast. It's like, if you're not ready when it hits, you miss the good part." Something about the way he said it made my chest ache. We spent the rest of the hike talking. About photos. About cities we wanted to visit. About how he worked as a nurse at Denver General, in the NICU, of all places. "So you're the real hero type," I joked. He shrugged, embarrassed. "Depends on the day. Sometimes I just feel like a tired guy in scrubs who drinks too much coffee." By the time the sun broke over the mountains, painting the sky in sherbet colors, it felt like I'd known him longer than the climb. When I tentatively mentioned my travel blog, I expected the usual polite nod. Instead, he asked for the link, pulled his phone out right there on the mountain, and bookmarked it. "You write like you're thinking out loud," he said later, over coffee in town. "I like that. It feels honest." No one had ever said that about me before. We went on one hike, then another, then a photography walk downtown, then dinner. Because we have to add fuel to keep taking pictures, right? With Mason, I'd always felt like I was auditioning, waiting for him to realize I was worth choosing. With Ethan, there was no audition. He just showed up, fully. When he had a hard day at the hospital, he'd tell me about it, but not dump it on me like a problem to solve. "Today was rough," he'd say. "Tiny humans shouldn't have to fight this hard." He didn't ask me to fix it. He just wanted me there, sitting on my couch, legs tangled with his, our takeout growing cold while we debriefed. When I had my big project presentation and confessed I felt like a kid wearing my mom's blazer, he didn't laugh it off or tell me I was being dramatic. "That makes sense," he said. "It's a lot. Want to run it once? Just us? I'll sit there and pretend to be the difficult stakeholder who interrupts you with dumb questions." We practiced until I stopped stumbling over the numbers. He didn't manage my emotions. He didn't make my anxiety about him. He just partnered. Meanwhile, Mason's messages turned from confused to something else. "You seem different. I feel like you're being distant, and I don't get why. You don't call when I need you anymore." That wording stuck with me. Need you. Not I miss you. Not I care about you. I typed and deleted a dozen responses. At last, I settled on, I'm busy building my life here, Mason. I can't be on call like I used to. 3 dots. Then, wow, okay, I guess Denver changed you. I stared at the screen, the irony almost funny. Denver hadn't changed me. It had just removed the constant emergency siren of his needs long enough that I could finally hear my own. One night, months later, I was cooking with Ethan in my kitchen, him chopping vegetables with way more confidence than he had any right to, music playing quietly, the mountains dark outside my window, when my phone buzzed. Mason, do you ever think about that night with the Christmas tree? My stomach dipped. I glanced at Ethan. He looked up, saw my face, and asked, "Everything okay?" "Just an old friend," I said. I showed him the screen. Ethan read the message, then looked back at me, eyes steady. "Do you want to answer?" he asked. For the first time in 3 years, I realized the question wasn't, "What does he need?" It was, "What do I want?" I locked my phone, set it face down on the counter, and picked up the knife again. "No," I said, "I'm good right here." Ethan smiled and bumped his shoulder against mine. As garlic hit the pan and the kitchen filled with warmth, I realized something simple and terrifying. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I was already chosen. And somewhere, hundreds of miles away, a man who'd built his whole comfort zone around me always being there was about to realize I wasn't. Denver didn't just become home, it became mine. 2 years vanished faster than I expected. They filled themselves with things that didn't revolve around Mason Reed: sunrise hikes, late-night editing sessions for my travel blog, work milestones that felt earned instead of survived. And Ethan. God, Ethan. We'd been together almost 2 years now. Steady, warm, uncomplicated in the best way. The kind of relationship where I didn't have to decode anything or justify why I felt like I wasn't enough. We lived in a place outside Boulder that had floor-to-ceiling windows facing the mountains. Every morning, sunlight spilled across our kitchen tile like it was blessing us on purpose. Sometimes, when I watched Ethan pack his coffee before a long shift, humming off-key to some 90s song, I'd think, so this is what it feels like to be someone's choice, not their convenience. That peace should have warned me something was coming. Because peace never lasts when your past believes it still owns you. It started with a work trip. My company flew me to Austin for a conference, and Ethan tagged along to visit his college roommate. We spent the weekend hiking around Zilker Park, eating too many tacos, laughing until our sides hurt. I posted 2 photos, one of us at the sunset overlook and one blurry selfie where he kissed my temple. Nothing dramatic, just life. 3 days after we flew home, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey stranger, I'm in Denver this week for a teacher's conference. Want to grab coffee?" My stomach twisted. Only one person called me stranger with that faux playful tone. Mason. We hadn't been close in almost 2 years. After I stopped enabling him, his messages faded. Our friendship didn't end with a fight. It just deflated once it no longer had fuel. Part of me wanted to ignore him. Another part, the part that used to carry all his emotional weight, felt a strange tug of responsibility. Closure, I told myself, just closure. So I agreed. Public place, busy cafe, downtown, daylight. I didn't mention it to Ethan until the morning of. Not because I wanted to hide anything, but because I felt weird that Mason still had enough gravitational pull to make me nervous. Ethan didn't flinch. "Do what feels right," he said. "Just don't go alone somewhere deserted with him. He's unpredictable." I kissed him goodbye and headed out. I spotted Mason before he saw me. Same floppy brown hair, same too big smile, but something was off. He was performing the version of himself he thought women fell for. Loud laugh, exaggerated gestures, leaning back like he owned the place. He stood when he saw me and pulled me into a hug that lingered too long. "Nora," he said, drawing out my name, "you look amazing. Denver looks good on you." "You too," I lied, sitting down. He ordered a caramel latte, extra whipped cream, his old favorite, but he didn't actually drink it. He just kept touching the cup like it was a prop in a scene he was rehearsing. "How's the new apartment?" he asked. "How's work?" "You still doing that little travel blog thing?" "Little travel blog. Cute." I stayed polite, distant. He noticed. "So," he said, leaning forward, "are you seeing anyone special?" Special. Like it might be casual. Like he was checking if there was still an opening for him. "Yes," I said. "His name is Ethan. We live together." There, clean, honest, solid. Mason blinked. Hard. For a second, he looked like someone had unplugged him. "Oh," he managed. "That's... wow. Already? I mean, good for you. That's fast though, right? It's been almost 2 years." He swallowed. Something tightened behind his eyes, something possessive and sharp. "Do you remember that night with the Christmas tree?" he asked suddenly. My spine stiffened. Of course he brought that up. "What about it?" I asked quietly. "I've been thinking about it," he said. A lot more than I expected. I stared at him. Was this real, or was he just testing his influence? "Mason, that was a long time ago." "Right, but I think I made a mistake," he said, dropping his voice like we were sharing a confession. "I was scared back then, scared of messing things up, but watching your life from far away, seeing you become this version of yourself." He shook his head. "I guess I didn't realize what I lost." There it was. The line. The hook. The implication that I'd been waiting for him this whole time, like a patient shadow. I didn't bite. "I didn't lose anything," I said softly. "I grew." He didn't like that. "I just meant maybe we should talk more. Hang out while I'm here," he pressed. "Just us. For old times." "I have plans with Ethan tonight." He frowned. "You can miss one dinner." "No," I said, "I really can't." Something cracked in his expression. An ugly, frustrated confusion. He stared at me like a child who'd just been told his favorite toy wasn't actually his. I cut the coffee short. He suggested dinner. I declined again. When I stood to leave, he said, "I just miss who we were." I looked at him and felt absolutely nothing except a faint echo of exhaustion. "We weren't what you think we were," I said. "You just liked how I made you feel." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. I walked away before he could find a response. The messages started that night. "I can't stop thinking about our talk today. Do you still think about what you said that Christmas? Do you ever wonder what we could have been? I'm free this weekend. We could meet again, just us. No distractions." It went on for days. I didn't answer, at all. One evening, as I was chopping cilantro for tacos, Ethan asked, "Do you want me to read them?" I handed him my phone. He read every word slowly, without judgment. Then he put the phone down, leaned back against the counter, and said, "This isn't about love. This is about losing control." I exhaled shakily, like I'd been holding my breath for months. "What do I do?" I asked. "You already did it," he said gently. "You left." I blocked Mason's number, but deep down I knew it wouldn't be the end. Because some people don't let go. They follow the version of you they built in their head, and when that version disappears, they don't wonder why. They chase. If life were fair, blocking Mason should have been the end of it, but people like Mason don't disappear when you close the door. They knock until their knuckles bleed, then they find a window. And when that doesn't work, they start telling stories so they can live with the silence. For a while, things felt beautifully normal. Ethan and I were settling into a quiet rhythm. Late-night NICU stories, weekend hikes, endless debates about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. It does. He's wrong. We talked about the future the way people talk about the weather, naturally, comfortably, as if it had already been written. One night we were lying on the couch, my feet in his lap, when he asked, "What would you think about us looking at rings?" I didn't say anything dramatic. I didn't burst into tears or squeal or demand hidden camera footage. I just smiled, slow and certain, and said, "Yeah, I'd like that." He squeezed my ankle and grinned like a kid with a secret. We set a date to go ring shopping the following month. Meanwhile, Mason was unraveling. It started subtly. A mutual friend from Houston, Avery, called me one afternoon. "Hey, have you talked to Mason lately?" "No," I said, chopping bell peppers in my kitchen. Avery exhaled sharply. "Okay, so he's been saying some things." My stomach tightened. "What things?" "Well," she hesitated, "he's been telling people you led him on. For years." I nearly sliced through the pepper. "What?" "Yeah, he's saying you emotionally strung him along, then abandoned him the second you met some guy in Denver." I laughed, sharp and humorless. "And people believe that?" "You know Mason. He tells stories like he's the protagonist of a tragic indie movie." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "So now I'm the villain in his autobiography?" "Well, he's also asking around about Ethan." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean, asking around?" "He told Marcus he wants Ethan's social media. Said he just wants to see what kind of guy stole his best friend." Stole. Like I was property. Like I belonged to him until he decided to claim me. I thanked Avery and hung up, hands trembling. Ethan found me standing motionless at the counter, knife still in hand. "What happened?" he asked. I told him everything. He listened, jaw tightening, but he didn't interrupt. When I finished, he took the knife gently out of my hand and set it aside. "Nora," he said softly, "we're not changing our plans because a grown man doesn't understand boundaries." "But he's digging," I whispered. "Into you, into us." He shrugged, calm in a way that only comes from deeply rooted self-worth. He's trying to find leverage because he lost control of you. Then, with absolute clarity, we're not pausing our life for him. And just like that, something inside me solidified. A line, a refusal, a backbone I didn't know I'd grown. But Mason wasn't done, not by a long shot. The text to our mutual friends intensified. His narrative evolved. Now, instead of me abandoning him, he claimed we had almost become something real, and I ran away from it. He conveniently forgot that the only person who ever confessed feelings was me, and the only person who shut it down was him. But in his retelling, he was the wounded hero, the man who'd been ready, finally, and whose soulmate had slipped through his fingers. Then things got darker. Marcus called. "Nora, he's been drunk calling me, 3 nights in a row." "What is he saying?" Marcus hesitated. "Mason said you were supposed to wait for him, that he always thought you'd be there when he was ready." My breath caught. There it was. The truth behind every dependable, every "you'll always be here," every friendship boundary he'd wrapped in pretty words. In Mason's mind, I wasn't a person. I was a placeholder, a guarantee, a safety net. And safety nets aren't supposed to cut themselves loose. Ethan and I went ring shopping that weekend anyway. We wandered through a tiny local jeweler's shop, laughing as I tried on rings that sparkled like they were auditioning for a starring role. Ethan held my hand the entire time, thumb brushing my knuckles, eyes soft every time he looked at me, like he still couldn't believe I'd chosen him back. Afterward, over coffee, he leaned forward and said, "We're not letting your past dictate your future, okay?" I nodded, because he was right. Because the old version of me, the one who shaped her life around Mason's comfort, would have postponed everything. But the new me, the me who had built a life I actually lived in, refused to let him steal one more second, even if he was getting increasingly unpredictable. Even if his obsession was morphing into something sharp around the edges. Even if a small, frightened part of me wondered what he was capable of. We drove home with the ring receipt hidden in Ethan's jacket pocket, and as the mountains came into view, dusted with snow like powdered sugar, I made a decision I'd been avoiding for years. I would not be a character in Mason Reed's fantasy anymore. I wasn't his backup plan. I wasn't his emotional furniture. I was Nora Ellis, and my life wasn't something he got to rewrite. But the thing about men like Mason is, when the story stops bending to their will, they don't put down the pen. They push harder. The week after ring shopping, I felt lighter than I had in years, like some old, invisible chain around my ribs had finally snapped. Ethan and I started planning an anniversary trip to Rocky Mountain National Park. We talked about rings, timelines, maybe adopting a dog. Life felt like it was filling in all the places Mason had drained hollow. But peace always comes before the storm. We posted our engagement photos on a Tuesday. Just a simple shot. Ethan kissing my temple, mountains in the background, my hand on his chest with the ring glinting in the light. The caption read, "Forever begins today." Within hours, everything detonated. My notifications exploded with likes, comments, reposts, but mixed in were things that made my skin crawl. Accounts with no profile pictures, usernames that looked like random keyboard smashes. 0 followers, 0 posts, all liking every photo I'd ever posted, one by one, from 2 years ago, from 3. Scrolling backward through my life like someone watching a movie frame by frame. Midnight, 3:00 a.m., 5:14 a.m., like someone who wasn't sleeping, someone who couldn't. Ethan looked at the pattern and exhaled slowly. "It's him," he said. "He's been watching you for months." I tightened my grip on the phone. "How do you know?" He opened his laptop, pulled up several anonymous profiles I didn't recognize. Mason Teacher 2024, Matt Rose, Denver, Teach, Love Laugh. Each account had liked all our photos, in the exact same pattern, at the same hours. "He's sloppy," Ethan said quietly. "He wants to be hidden, but he wants to be seen." I blocked the accounts one by one, but the dread didn't leave. Because paranoia doesn't start with loud footsteps. It starts with soft ones. The letter showed up 2 weeks later. Elena, my fiancé, found it in the mailbox after a 12-hour NICU shift. A thin, unmarked envelope with her name written in looping handwriting. My name wasn't on it, just hers. She came inside holding it like something dangerous. "Nora, this was in the mailbox." My stomach dropped. No return address, no stamp. Someone had put it there by hand. Ethan sat beside me as we opened it. 3 pages, typed, stapled neatly. The tone was chilling, like a stranger writing love poetry from inside a locked room. The letter began with, "You don't deserve her, and she doesn't love you. Not really." Then it spiraled, hard. It referenced inside jokes Mason and I had from college, things I'd forgotten, old Instagram posts I had deleted years ago, places I'd mentioned once in captions, photos he must have screenshotted before I ever moved to Denver. Then came the knife twists. She's with you because she can't have what she really wants. Ask her about the Christmas tree night. Watch her face. Nora always loved me. I was her soulmate. You're just the distraction. That word, soulmate, felt like a slap. There were paragraphs dissecting Ethan's schedule, his hiking habits, even the name of his college roommate. None of that was public. Not anywhere. My blood ran cold. He had been researching Ethan, studying him, tracking him. For how long? The last line was the worst. "You should let her go. She belongs with me. She always has." Ethan read the final sentence out loud. Then he folded the letter with surgical precision, set it on the table, and said calmly, "Okay, we document everything." I stared at him, numb. "You're not worried?" "Oh, I'm worried," he said, "but not about us." He looked me directly in the eyes. He wants to plant doubt. He wants us to break ourselves so he doesn't have to get his hands dirty. Ethan reached out, took my trembling hand, and squeezed gently. "He underestimated who you are, and he underestimated us." And that was the moment, right there, when I fell in love with him all over again. We contacted Marcus, sent him photos of the letter, asked him to deliver one final message to Mason. "That chapter is closed. Do not contact us again." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, "Nora, I need to warn you about something." I swallowed. "What?" "Mason called me the night your engagement photos went up. Drunk, crying, begging for your address in Denver." My entire body went cold. "He what?" "I didn't give it to him," Marcus said quickly. "But he said you stole his chance at happiness, that he always thought you'd be there once he was ready." My breath hitched. The exact words from 2 years ago. The same entitlement, the same delusion. In Mason's mind, I didn't belong to myself. I belonged to him. I was his emotional property, his right, his future. I hung up the phone, shaking. Ethan wrapped an arm around me as I pressed my forehead into his chest. "Do we need to be scared?" I whispered. "No," he said firmly. "We need to be smart and united. That's what he can't handle." We documented everything. Screenshots, fake accounts, the letter, Marcus's call, even the pattern of likes. Ethan made his social media private. I locked mine down. We blocked everything suspicious. Then, nothing. Silence. 6 months of it. Long enough for the fear to fade, the tension to loosen, the paranoia to ebb. Long enough to breathe. Long enough to believe the worst might be over. And in that time, life flowered. Ethan and I bought a house with mountain views, so stunning they looked painted. We started marriage counseling, not because we were struggling, but because we wanted to stay strong. We talked about wedding plans, baby names, careers, family. We were building something real, something deep, something that could weather storms, something Mason had never once offered me. The final update came from Marcus again, a phone call out of the blue. "Hey," he said carefully, "you may want to know. Mason's been telling people you two were emotionally involved while you were already with Ethan." I closed my eyes. Of course, the last rewrite of the story, the one where he's the victim and I'm the traitor. Marcus continued, "He's been showing old texts, ones where you were comforting him when he was crying over some girl. He's using them as proof that you two had something deep, like you were cheating with him emotionally." I laughed, a small sad sound. Ethan looked at me and opened his arms. I stepped into them without thinking. Marcus sighed. "I'm sorry, Nora. He's not well." "I know," I whispered. "But here's the thing. The part Mason never understood, even when he was inside the center of my world. You can't rewrite the truth if the person you're rewriting it about isn't playing your game anymore. I wasn't his ghost. I wasn't his missing puzzle piece. I wasn't his lost future. I was living my real future, fully, with someone who chose me every single day without needing to keep me on a hook just in case. Some people think love means having a forever option, someone who will always be there when you finally decide you're ready. But real love is choosing someone every day and being chosen back every day without question. That's the life I built. That's the life Mason could never offer. That's the life he could never destroy. Because being someone's first choice is the only kind of love that lasts.